There have been individuals throughout the history of the world that have led extraordinary lives that deserve immortalization and praise forever. These remarkable people were examples of the best of humanity, providing selfless inspiration that uplifted all humankind. Their lives created positive changes that will endure for years to come. One significant person who always evokes an exceptional life of purpose was Helen Keller. Helen Adams Keller was born on June 27, 1880. Ms. Keller died on June 1, 1968, following a long life of determination, principle, and faith that guided her. Understandably, when you think of the name Helen Keller, the first thing that often comes to mind were the disabilities from the loss of hearing and sight she experienced. But the real focus of Helen Keller should concentrate on the incredible tenacity she had to overcome her challenges, and the miraculous way she turned them into opportunities and teachable moments her entire life. In her 88 years on this earth, Helen Keller's name became synonymous with words like persistence, conviction, and grit. Inspiration was, without a doubt, another deserved word used to describe Ms. Keller because she became one of the world's greatest motivating influences for individuals with disabilities. The Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, or the MCB, serves people in Massachusetts who are legally blind by providing access to employment opportunities and social rehabilitation with the goal of increasing independence and full community participation. The MCB was established on July 13, 1906. The organization was originally comprised of 3 men and 2 women, including Ms. Helen Keller. This group functioned as a board of directors and was established as a state agency to provide services to individuals who were blind. The original agency was organized around 2 residential workshops for the blind, one for men, the other for women. This early work of Helen Keller, helping to establish the MCB, served as a model for the purposeful life of Ms. Keller. In 1913, she began lecturing with the aid of an interpreter, primarily on behalf of the American Foundation for the Blind. Her lecture tours took her several times around the world, and she did much to remove the stigmas and ignorance surrounding sight and hearing disorders. Often at the time, these disabilities resulted in the committal of blind and deaf to asylums. Now let's listen to some voices of people who admire Helen Keller and who want to share some of the important moments from her life.
Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama on June 27, 1880. Alexander Graham Bell, famous teacher of the deaf and inventor of the telephone, recognized Helen as being exceptionally bright, despite her severe sensory loss. Helen had lost her hearing and vision when she was 19 months old as a result of meningitis. Ms. Keller began instruction following a suggestion of Alexander Graham Bell under Annie Sullivan, a 20-year-old, partially blind orphan and graduate of Boston's Perkins Institute for the Deaf and Blind. Helen matured under the instruction of Sullivan, who was later to be called the Miracle Worker by Mark Twain. World fame grew even before the era of mass communication. Ms. Keller learned to read and write in Braille. Liberated from the double dungeon of darkness and silence, by Miss Sullivan, it was Annie who taught Helen that water flowing from a well has a name. Water. Helen remembered that experience and called it my soul's birthday.
The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart.
Helen Keller enrolled in Radcliffe College in 1900, which later became a division of Harvard University. She enrolled as a regular student, but aided by Sullivan, who would spell lectures into her hand. While still a student at Radcliffe, Helen began a writing career that would continue throughout her life. In 1903, Helen's autobiography, The Story of My Life, was her first published book. Ms. Keller completed college cum laude in 1904 as the first blind and deaf person to graduate college. She wrote at the time, "I shall devote my life to those who suffer from loss of sight." Throughout Helen's formative college years, there grew an insatiable interest of people throughout the world in her miraculous accomplishments. Ms. Keller became friends with the famous Mark Twain, and it was he who recognized her great intellect and indomitable spirit, despite being blind and deaf. Twain predicted, "Helen Keller will create a fame that will endure in history for centuries. Along her special lines, she is the most extraordinary product of the ages." She was the first blind and deaf person to communicate effectively.
When one door closes, another opens. But we often look so regretfully upon the closed door that we don't see the one that has opened for us.
In 1919, Helen starred in the silent movie Deliverance, which tells the story of the life of Helen Keller and her teacher, Annie Sullivan. Helen met Charlie Chaplin, the first of the individuals in the entertainment world with whom she would become acquainted. Others included Enrico Caruso, Mary Pickford, Catherine Cornell, and Douglas Fairbanks. Miss Keller continued to lecture in the United States, and her world fame increased. During this period, Helen wrote and published The World I Live In. By feeling the vibrations of his violin, Helen was able to listen and experience the music of young Jascha Heifetz, who eventually became one of the greatest violin virtuosos of the 20th century. Helen learned to recognize composers because, as she said, each delicate note alighted on my fingertips like thistledown. They touched my face, my hair, like kisses remembered. The complex and purposeful life of Helen Keller included work as a counselor on national and international relations for the American Foundation for the Blind. Through Helen Keller, AFB's profile brought public awareness throughout the United States and helped to raise development funds.
Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much.
Once Helen Keller began instruction under Ms. Sullivan, she discovered the possibilities that she could learn and master to her advantage. Her quick development and maturity allowed her special qualities to immediately draw the attention of people everywhere, including Alexander Graham Bell and Mark Twain, and many notables in entertainment. The more people she met, the greater her fame became known. Rather than letting her physical disabilities overtake her life, Helen stated, "Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it." Her indomitable determination proved this to be true. Ms. Keller worked diligently to achieve the skill of reading and writing Braille. She knew this was a pathway to communicating in the world that could help her fulfill her mission and purpose in life. Helen also succeeded in a tremendously difficult path that led to a college degree at Radcliffe College, a first for a woman with her disabilities. Her strength, will, and endless ambition would eventually lead Helen to a life of lectures and tours in the United States and then around the world. Helen said, "It is not blindness or deafness that brings me my darkest hours. It is the acute disappointment in not being able to speak normally. Longingly, I feel how much more good I may have done if I had only acquired normal speech. But out of this sorrowful experience, I understand more clearly all human striving, thwarted ambitions, and infinite capacity of hope.
It was Helen Keller who successfully challenged Lions International, the world's largest fraternal organization, to become Knights for the Blind in the battle against darkness. The Lions went on to accept the challenge and establish sight-saving programs and eye banks. In 1990, the Lions rededicated themselves to Sight First. Helen published Midstream, My Later Life at age 49, and traveled to Europe for the first time. Ms. Keller embarked on the first of 3 tours of Japan, establishing a close relationship with the Japanese people, whose culture especially reveres triumph of the mind over bodily infirmity. She gave 97 lectures in 39 cities. No foreign visitor has ever been accorded such an enthusiastic reception, according to the Akita Journal. Her next book she published was My Religion. Thanks to Helen's eloquent plea for standardization, Braille became accepted as the world's standard alphabet for the blind. Ms. Keller's ability to make close relationships throughout her life continued with Eleanor Roosevelt. And when she met President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he said, "Whatever Helen Keller's for, I'm for."
Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence.
Miss Keller spent time visiting military hospitals, calling the opportunities the crowning experience of my life. She further remarked, "A drop of sweetness stole into my grief over the paralyzed as they tried to put their wasted arms around me, not always successfully, but their wish was a benediction I shall treasure forever." Helen became a Chevalier of the French Legion, a, quote, Knight of the Empire, in a ceremony commemorating the birth of Louis Braille at the Sorbonne in Paris. The Chevalier is an award for excellent civil or military conduct. Helen Keller was honored by the world's ambassadors to the United States as she was preparing for a world tour. Eleanor Roosevelt referred to Miss Keller as America's goodwill ambassador to the world, while Helen referred to herself as an international beggar. Miss Keller embarked on multiple world tours on behalf of individuals with disabilities, inspiring governments to begin schools for the blind and deaf. She visited 35 countries on 5 continents between 1946 and 1957. In 1952, Helen received the gold medal by the National Institute of Social Sciences, given annually to a distinguished individual who has been of outstanding service to humanity.
Often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one that has been opened for us.
Helen Keller was a prolific writer and lecturer. She met celebrities, artists, and political figures around the world. She received various honors, medals, and honorary university degrees. Ms. Keller became the face and voice of the American Foundation for the Blind. Helen enlisted the Lions International to join in the crusade to improve the lives of those that are blind, helping to empower and provide greater independence for visually impaired individuals. Her selfless commitment to others, especially those with the same loss of vision or hearing that she shared, makes Helen Keller one of the unforgettable personalities in modern history. As a goodwill ambassador for the blind around the world, Helen Keller inspired individuals and entire governments of countries to participate in changing the perceptions so many had of persons with disabilities. Helen's unwavering desire to make a positive difference and her magnetic presence wherever she traveled had a significant impact on the quality of life throughout the world.
People respected Ms. Keller worldwide. She was an inspiration to everyone. On tour in India, Helen received warm welcomes by massive crowds of admirers, including an invitation to a meeting with Prime Minister Nehru. When she met with Winston Churchill, he called her the most remarkable woman of our age. In 1954, Helen met choreographer Martha Graham and dancers at Graham's studio for a scene from the film Helen Keller in Her Story, produced by Nancy Hamilton. The documentary earned Helen an honorary Oscar as the inspiration for the movie in 1955. During this period, Miss Keller published yet another book titled Teacher, Anne Sullivan Macy.
I cannot do everything, but I can do something. I must not fail to do the something that I can do.
There were several firsts for Helen Keller during her lifetime, and at the age of 75, Helen was the first woman to receive an honorary doctorate degree from Harvard University. Miss Keller met with President Eisenhower, who was the first non-blind person to use talking books during his convalescence from a heart attack. It was Helen who pioneered the concept of talking books. President John F. Kennedy was the 10th and last United States president with whom Miss Keller would be personally acquainted. However, it was President Lyndon Johnson that bestowed America's highest civilian honor on Miss Keller in 1964, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. On October 19, 1959, The Miracle Worker, the story of Helen's early instruction by Annie Sullivan, debuted at the Playhouse Theater in New York City. The play starred Patty Duke and Anne Bancroft. Miss Keller retired from public life when she suffered a stroke. Nevertheless, she remained vibrant and interested in world affairs.
Hope sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and achieves the impossible.
Helen Keller has remained a symbol of courage and hope. She was a woman of astounding intelligence, unwavering determination, unbelievable courage, and insurmountable achievement. A model of excellence for living a life of purpose. Ms. Keller's steadfast work to bring awareness and change for those without sight helped to establish organizations that continue her work worldwide and that help to lay the foundation for local agencies in the United States. Helen's dedication raised the quality of life for millions of blind and deaf individuals for generations to come. Ms. Keller deserved the attention, admiration, awards, and praise she received. She felt as if she was a world citizen because of all her travels. She became a celebrity to celebrities and the rich and famous. But what was most important was Helen Keller's dedicated life to the betterment of others, inspiring people to see the potential in their own lives, as well as the lives of people around them.
The American Foundation for Overseas Blind changed its name to Helen Keller International, becoming the preeminent organization providing public health services to the blind and blindless prevention in developing countries worldwide. Life magazine called Helen Keller one of the 25 most important Americans of the 20th century, a national treasure. Helen Keller died at the age of 88 and memorialized at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Senator Lester Hill of Alabama eulogized Helen as one of the few names not born to die. She is the First Lady of Courage. Teaching the Helen Keller story continues in schools and service institutions working under her name. The foremost of these is the American Foundation for the Blind, an organization she helped to establish. The family of Miss Keller, distinguished scientists and physicians together, established the Helen Keller Eye Research Foundation. the only research organization bearing her name to pursue her quest to help me hasten the day when there shall be no preventable blindness.
A bend in the road is not the end of the road, unless you fail to make the turn.
In 1994, the Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research was established to bring public attention to vision research as a solution to vision loss. The award honors outstanding vision researchers worldwide who labor to save the precious gift of sight for current and future generations. Gallup polls recurrently confirms that blindness is the most feared of all disabilities. The name Helen Keller is preeminent in the struggle against blindness, as are few names in other fields. The Helen Keller Eye Research Foundation appointed Miss Keller's great-grandniece, Miss Keller Johnson, to develop and conduct a school education program based on the life and legacy of Helen. Time magazine selects Helen Keller as one of the 100 most influential people in the 20th century.
The highest result of education is tolerance.
The Helen Keller Eye Research Foundation changes its name to the Helen Keller Foundation for Research and Education, saving sight, speech, and hearing. The foundation now pursues new treatments through research and education. The foundation has discovered treatments for retinal detachment, eye injury, diabetic eye disease, strokes of the eye, and surgery of the macula, the center of vision. Helen Keller's image is a prominent feature of the Alabama State Quarter, which was part of the 50 State Quarters program. The Alabama Quarter began circulation in 2003 and is the first U.S. coin to feature Braille. On October 7, 2009, a statue of 7-year-old Helen, depicting the moment she got the sense of language, became part of the display in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. The unveiling, coordinated by then Alabama Governor Bob Riley and his wife Patsy, and the piece of art named The Miracle of the Well, now represents Alabama as a beacon of hope.
I believe that the welfare of each is bound up in the welfare of all.
As the foremost figure in history to have overcome a health affliction, Helen Keller caused the world to reconsider the abilities of all individuals with disabilities, forever increasing their life potential. Helen Keller is known the world over as a symbol of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet she was so much more. A woman of radiant intelligence, high ambition, and great accomplishment, Helen had deep compassion for others and devoted herself to helping them overcome significant obstacles to living healthy and productive lives. Ms. Keller was a shining example of great assurance and spirit like the world had never seen. She was a woman confronted with unimaginable challenges at an early age, and yet compelled to overcome them. Please remember, honor, and celebrate the life of purpose that Helen Keller pursued. May her legacy be a life lesson never forgotten and an illustration of life's possibilities for everyone. An appropriate conclusion to this tribute to Helen Keller is one more quote in her own words. My life has been happy because I have had wonderful friends and plenty of interesting work to do, adding, I seldom think about my limitations, and they never make me sad. Perhaps there is just a touch of yearning at times, but it is vague, like a breeze among flowers. The wind passes, and the flowers are content. The inspiring life story of Helen Keller is one of importance for society. Against overwhelming odds, Helen fought with remarkable determination to re-enter the world she lost. She will always remain a powerful symbol of triumph over adversity and a model of hope for others that face similar challenges. This short biography of Helen's life was possible thanks to the Helen Keller Foundation. A thank you should also go out to the volunteer voices that read for this audio production. The readers were familiar with Ms. Keller's history, and those that participated wanted to honor her memory as her June 27th birth date approaches. There are a variety of sources for information about Ms. Keller's life of purpose, and her story needs telling, recognizing her achievements, strength, and courage. Agencies serving the visually impaired and blind in Pennsylvania and elsewhere are grateful to Ms. Keller for her diligence and accomplishments that led to the creation of the care and support of blind individuals. She and others stress the development of independence and empowerment of persons with visual impairment to provide a greater quality of life. Education, training, and employment were the significant keys to opening doors. Under the umbrella of the leadership and guidance from the Pennsylvania Association for the Blind, the PAB, 25 independent agencies for the blind work continuously to provide services and programs to support visually impaired Pennsylvanians in their quest to remain independent. The PAB advocates and monitors state budget funds that support each agency. But as important as the budgetary funds are, agencies still require the financial generosity of businesses and individuals to fulfill its services and mission to the communities they serve. By providing a contribution to your local agency where you live, you can make a positive difference. To find out who serves your community, you can visit the Pennsylvania Association for the Blind website at www.pablind.org or by calling 717-766-2020 or emailing info@pablind.org. Your gift will honor the memory of Helen Keller and support your local programs and services for the blind and visually impaired. Thank you.
Each June, Vision Resources honors the life and achievements of Helen Keller. Helen's inspirational and dedicated life for blind individuals is the foundation for the mission of the Vision Resources Agency. Your contribution this month will help to ensure that blind and visually impaired members of your community are empowered to enjoy greater independence and quality of life. Please make your gift today by mailing a check to VROCP, 1130 South 19th Street, Harrisburg, PA, 17104, or securely online at the agency website www.vrocp.org. For questions, please call 717-238-2531. Thank you for your support.